So, hello everyone, welcome. My name is Joni from Volunteering SANT based here in the Adelaide office, and just wanted to welcome everyone to making a priority to come along and find out what's available for leaders of volunteers in the sector to do better in your space, build your own learning and development for the betterment of your volunteer teams and volunteering involving organisations. Before introducing our special guest today, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the countries and lands on which we are all joining from today. We have quite a diverse participants with us today, or attendees from all around our beautiful country, so welcome. And we acknowledge the traditional owners on those lands on which we are all joining from today. I'd also like to acknowledge the deep and continuing connection to land, waters and communities that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people continue to hold today, and pay our respects to elders past and present, and also a warm welcome to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. This is a really exciting session. It's gone national, which is fantastic. And I guess this session around knowledge base and what's out there and what you can access as leaders of volunteers, this has all come about from our feedback with the sector in South Australia and the Northern Territory. But I am assuming, Clint, when it's probably reflective all around our country. Kind of resources that leaders of volunteers are looking for to up their skills, but also really look at how can we recruit and retain volunteers and recognise them. So it's some commonality coming through in those issues and trends, but to be honest, nothing really new. So it's stuff that's already out there. So this was a really great space today to showcase Knowledge Base, a wonderful new free platform for leaders of volunteers and volunteers themselves all around our country to access. And I'm delighted to introduce a colleague from the Centre for Volunteering, Clint Burtonshaw, who will be taking you through Knowledge Base today. So from here, I'm going to hand over to Clint. He'll be running the whole show now, sharing his screen, etc. And Paola and myself will be in the background. We'll keep an eye out on the questions and answers that you might be popping there in the box. And in the last 15 minutes of the session today, we'll be going back to the Q&A area to answer any of those questions. So over to you, Clint. Thank you.
Thanks, Joni, and thank you all for having me. It's really exciting to be able to jump onto such a very large webinar and provide some information about the National Knowledge Base. I'd like to start myself by paying respects to the traditional custodians of the land in which I'm coming to you from, which is Nipaluna Litrawida, which is, for those who don't know, that's Hobart, Tasmania. So I do work for the Centre for Volunteering, the peak body in New South Wales, but I've got the absolute privilege of also being able to live and reside down in Hobart, Tasmania, which is gorgeous. I am the Director of Sector Development and Engagement at the Centre for Volunteering, and that's a fancy title for basically saying, but I get the absolute privilege of putting together the really cool resources and tools that we use to help develop the sector and to help give volunteer leaders a little bit of relief, I guess, in what they do. So you don't need to necessarily try and know everything or build everything from scratch. Hopefully, we're able to provide you with tools and resources that will help you to run your programs better. And the knowledge base came about as a way of going, well, if I've got all these tools and resources, and we know that all the state peaks are working on these fantastic tools and resources, how do we get it all together? How do we put it into a single location where you, a time poor volunteer manager, volunteer leader, can just go to a one-stop shop and find what you're after? And so that's what we're going to look at today is the National Knowledge Base. So I'll start by sharing my screen and just going through a couple of PowerPoint slides. I promise you this won't be death by PowerPoint, but I thought it might be a little bit easier to show a few screens that are static rather than totally live so that your eyes don't suddenly jump out of your head. And then we'll cut across to a live demonstration of the knowledge base where I'll call out some key resources that are worth taking a look at. And then we'll go back to the slides where I give you a little bit of a rundown as to what's on the horizon for the knowledge base, which is fantastic. There's some exciting things coming. And then we'll open up to a Q&A at the end. So without any further ado, I'll just share my screen. And hopefully that is coming to you now. And I'll just set the screen up so that I can see what I'm doing here. All right. So a little bit of an overview. The National Knowledge Base was developed to offer volunteer leaders a centralized location to access information and resources created by or in partnership with the state peak bodies. These resources may have been created by the peak bodies themselves. Maybe they're part of partnerships with other organisations, other peaks, maybe even other volunteer involving organisations, depending on what the remit of the project was. And what we do with the knowledge base is ensure that we go through and we collate and curate. That is the key here. The knowledge base is not just a dumping ground for resources. We take our time to actually take a look at the resources that come up the funnel and decide where it's going to go. Is there already an existing page on the knowledge base where that resource could be added? Is it additional information that could be added to the page? Is the resource even relevant anymore? Do we need to archive it? And so we're constantly going through this collation and curation so that you as the end user are not left sitting there going, okay, that's nice. Which one do I choose? Which resource is right? Which one's the most up to date? And if there is any conflict of information, how can you work out what you should be using? And often it will come down to a simple thing like, is it a state-based regulation? Okay, this resource might be generic, but once you start to look at the regulation and the laws, it may be that it's relative to a particular state or territory. It's also continually growing. And this is not just a one-shot kill project where we've thrown it up there, said, here you go, guys, this is all for you. Fill your boots and be done with it. We are constantly working on this. And as part of federal funding and the volunteer management activity that you may or may not have heard of, across the nation, a number of representatives get together and we discuss all the different things that are being built within our individual states and nationally, and we're working to add those to the knowledge base as well. And a little bit later on, I'll also show how you can provide feedback to us so that you can get involved and let us know what you want to hear. And obviously, you know, to quote an old ad, it won't happen overnight, but it will happen. We'll obviously take all that feedback on and try to incorporate that into the knowledge base as quick as possible. So to access the knowledge base, I'm not going to sit here and take you through all the state and territory peaks websites. That would be boring, and I'd also probably make a fool of myself as I stumble around everyone's website. But you should be familiar with your own state or territory's peak website. If you're not, I highly recommend you do have a look. There's a straight out plug for you. Head over to the peak body website in your state or territory and find where the link to the knowledge base is on there. You can obviously access the knowledge base directly, but you'll also be missing out on all the fantastic things that are on your peak territories website. So please head over there. Then you can go and click on the link and be in the knowledge base and find what you're looking for. Once you do access it, you'll be greeted with a very simple to navigate home screen of the knowledge base. Now, I have taken a few static screenshots, as I mentioned here. We will do a live demonstration in a moment, but there are a few key areas on the screen. Firstly, you'll see that there's a search bar along the sort of top section of the page. There's also a couple of tiles around midway of the page where you can access the various categories we have identified for the knowledge base. Along the top, you'll also see there is a login and sign up. In a moment, I'll talk about that, but let me just reassure you, you do not have to sign up to use the knowledge base. The knowledge base is 100% free, and you can access it without having to sign up to yet another thing. We are not looking to get you to give us out your email address so we can spam you or do anything like that. The reason why the login exists is for one piece of functionality only, and that is if you would like to participate on the forums. The knowledge base has built-in forums where you can converse with colleagues right across the nation, but we ask that you sign up so you're not posting anonymously. Two reasons for that. Firstly, so that people can get to know one another and build that network and actually see that they're real people. And on the real people side, so that we don't have bots and all the spammers getting in there trying to sell you everything, including links to a Bali holiday and whatever else. So that's the only reason why we get you to log in. You can participate in the forums. You may not, but you won't be able to access them unless, of course, you do sign up. Searching's very easy as well. I'll obviously show you this live, but you can see that it is very much based on words within the articles or within the title of the article itself. So I use an example here where I've typed in the word youth. I know that youth has a number of articles, but I also know that there are articles that are just on youth volunteering, but there are also things that pertain to youth volunteering, like Let's Talk Volunteering, Youth Volunteering, which is actually one of our podcast episodes. So just by typing in some keywords, you should be able to find what you're looking for. And that's part of the curation process, is that when we set up a new page, a new article, a new resource on the knowledge base, we try to make sure that the keywords that a user would be looking for is actually somewhere in the body of the page that it resides on, so that when you do a search, you're likely to come up with a result. Okay, here you can see the screen has slightly changed. For those of you with an eagle eye, you'll notice that Browse Articles is now met with Meet the Community next to it. This is a screenshot of what happens when you do log in. And when you do log in, you'll notice that up the very top, you now have forums. There's a little icon with potentially an initial for your first name or however you sign up. And when you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see that forums is now viewable. And on there, we've got a couple of different categories, and we can add more, remove more for whatever's going on as far as topics go within the actual forums themselves. Here you'll see I've clicked on volunteer management, and you'll see that there's already a little bit of conversation happening in there. We've got a couple of categories that have had no conversation in them yet. We may change them, we may not. The forums are still a relatively new concept in that whilst they've been there for a little while, engagement with them, it's still, it's like anything. People take time to explore and navigate and get used to it and decide what do they want to put on there. And if you were to say click on one of the conversations like digitizing volunteer records, you'd be greeted with a screen where you can see here Luke has actually posed a question and Kylie has come in with her thoughts. And this is a great way to share across the network. And when I say the network, I'm talking the whole national volunteer involving organization network. Volunteers, volunteer leaders, people just passionate about volunteering can get in there and share alike. This is fantastic. As someone who has got a learning and development background, one of my biggest beliefs is that we learn best when we learn off each other. And some of the benefits of that is we can obviously provide you with all the articles and e-learning and tools that I'm about to show you, but sometimes just being able to pose a question up there and hear how another organization has tackled it is worth its weight in gold. Way too much gold, to be honest with you. So now I'm going to move into a live demonstration. In case, for whatever reason, you're unable to find the link to the knowledge base on your Peaks website, and I do highly recommend you reach out to your Peak and find out where the link is, you can access it directly by going to volunteering.freshdesk.com. But again, I do encourage you to go through to your Peaks website because it's all the other valuable information that's on your Peaks website, including where the Peak may have actually pulled out links to specific articles based on requests from users within their state or territory. But once you do get into the system, you'll see that we break the knowledge base down by currently 5 categories: articles, e-learning, videos and podcasts, templates, research and reports. Now, over time, these may change, but these are the 5 categories that we have put most of the resources under. And I'll just quickly go through what you'll find under each. Articles are effectively your normal everyday pages of information. Almost think of it a little bit like Wikipedia, with maybe a little more authority than Wikipedia, depending on who wrote that article, in that we'll create pages with an extensive amount of text on the page to provide as much information as possible. It may be a little bit of a mixed bag what's on the page, as in we may have embedded videos, audio, links to additional pages, and then usually at the bottom of the page there may be attachments, and those attachments could be anything pertaining to that topic. Quick guides, additional readings that you might want to pull down, white papers, a whole range of them, generally all in PDF format. E-learning is exactly that. This is where we are curating and collating the various pieces of e-learning that are being made available throughout the national network. And there's e-learning on just about everything you could cover. And you'll find that in most cases, the articles themselves, if there is e-learning pertaining to that topic, will have linked to it. But you can go just to the e-learning to have a bit of an explore and see what's on there. And we'll go through those in a moment. Videos and podcasts. That's almost like our media ground. Here we've got a range of different videos where you'll have everything from purpose-built videos on a range of topics like digital literacy and platforms we use within the network like Victor and Involve that you might be aware of, right down to where we place webinars just like this. So you can go back, and if a webinar was recorded and made publicly available, you can go back and take a look at that and pick up on the pieces of information and get to catch up on something that you may not have been able to see at the time. Templates. This is actually one of the most useful sections of the knowledge base. For all this information that is available, that's great, but we understand your time poor. And so what we've done is we've collated a huge library of templates that we have stripped down, deliberately stripped down. They're not fancy looking by any stretch of the imagination, and have made them customizable so that you can pull down policies, procedures, and templates you may require as a volunteer leader for your volunteer program, and then can come along and customize them to suit your organization and program. So it could be as easy as following the bouncing ball and filling out the areas that are identified in the policy or procedure, or you could even take it to the next level and add your own headers, logos, color guides, branding, whatever you may do. We have stripped all the branding away so that you don't have to spend half your life debranding to rebrand it with your own. Finally, we've got research and reports, and this is a relatively new area of the knowledge base in that across the nation, the state peaks are running their own research and reports, but we're also running national reports as well as part of government funding. So here you'll find where they are starting to be collated and curated there. There's currently one national report there on there at the moment on online accessibility, and I urge that you take a look at that. New South Wales has a couple on there. Look, it's part and parcel of me having my grubby little mitts involved. I could throw up our reports on there, but the other states peaks will be putting theirs on there over time as well, and it will grow. It'll be a great library of research and reports that you can check out. So I think I've rabbited on enough with the static screens. Allow me to now just stop sharing for a moment while I load up the knowledge base for you. And I'll just reshare now. Okay. And you should now have a view of the knowledge base live on your screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work through a couple of different sections here. Hopefully I've identified a few really cool resources, really cool articles that I think you should go and take a look at. But it's not limited to just what I'm going to show you. As I said, this is continually growing. We've got a heap of articles on here, and get on there and have a play, please. Share and share alike. If you've got colleagues who have missed this presentation, get them to take a look at it. You really can't break it. The worst thing you can do is not use it. to be completely honest. So please get on there, start using it, provide feedback to us. Every state and territory has a representative who can get feedback back to myself and the L&D project team for what we need to consider for the knowledge base. This thing, the old saying, if you build it, they will come. Well, we've already built it, but we want it to be as useful for you as possible. We think we know what you want, but we won't know until you tell us what you really want. So there's a little deal there. If you provide the feedback, we can obviously make this as best as possible. So again, just on the search, I'll quickly just show you. If I was to say, look at, maybe I want to find something about new migrants. And if I start typing, I can see here that we've got some articles on here engaging newly arrived migrants. I can click on that article from here, or I could even search for it through just browsing through the articles section. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on articles now and take you through each of these tiles so you get to have a bit of a look under what's under each of them. So if we take a look, when you get here, we've got some subcategories, and these are likely to change over time. There is a bunch of work happening within the Peak Body Network at the moment where I'm not going to give away too much at the moment. I'll probably end up putting my big foot in my big mouth, but there is work that may result in us changing up some of these categories. But you can see here, we've got a general category, mental health, the 2015 National Standards of Volunteer Involvement. These are resources pertaining to the national standards as they had been existing. And for those of you who have been paying attention, the national standards have gone for a refresh. I'm not going to turn that into a national standards refresh session. Most of the state peaks and territories are running those over the coming days and weeks, but you'll see we've also got the national standards for volunteer involvement here, which talk about the new refresh national standards. So highly urge you to go and take a look at those as well. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and find this newly arrived migrants article. So doesn't really pertain to any of these other categories. I'm just going to use general, view all 37, and you'll see they're in alphabetical order. And here it is here at the bottom of the page, engaging newly arrived migrants. Now, I've selected this article deliberately in the first instance for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's a great example of where there are resources here that both are developed internally from the Peak network and from a number of peaks. There's also a lot of information on here that you can gather without having to watch videos or do any e-learning or anything like that. There are also links to external sites where we think that there are platforms and portals and websites out there that do a great job of providing information or have great tools that you should look at, and we're not going to go and rip them off. And so this is a really good example of where we curate all of that onto a single page. So you can see there's a bit of information here at the top. Additional reading tools from SBS. SBS have some fantastic resources when it comes to inclusion, diversity, and multicultural. We've linked to a few of those, and they'll just open up in an additional browser window, and you can take a look at those. We've then also got a couple of different video projects that have come out of two of the peaks. At the top here, we've got Let's Talk Cultural Inclusion in Volunteering from Volunteering Tasmania, and these are fantastic videos to take a look at. I really enjoyed watching those. And then down here, we've got recruitment support video series, which was done with the Centre for Volunteering. And I can talk a little more to this. This was actually in partnership with an organisation as part of our Project Partner program. So we had Canterbury Community Centre stars who organised these fantastic videos. And the cool part is there's an English video and then there's 3 others in language. So volunteer leaders can use these to help encourage those from multicultural backgrounds to partake in volunteering, but more importantly, hearing these videos in language from people of their own culture, which is pretty cool. And there's also accompanying fact sheets. So you go through, you take a bit of a look, and then you'll see what I was talking about with all the various attachments down the bottom. Now, I'm going to get ahead of something right now. The attachments at the bottom of the page look awful. We know this. You can barely read what they are. What we're trying to do to combat that at the moment, this is a limitation of the theme of Freshdesk at the moment. The knowledge base is actually built on Freshdesk. So for those of you who maybe got a bit of a techie background, you may have had experiences with Freshdesk in the past. Um, we're currently got programmers who are going to be changing the theme up to try and rectify some of these limitations, like the attachments looking like garbage at the bottom of the page. That is getting fixed. But for now, what we're trying to do is where we've got a link or an attachment that we want you to have access to, we do actually put it in the body. So you know what it is. So here where it says click here to download the Chinese simplified fact sheet, that will actually be sitting down here as well. Okay. So once you've reviewed what you want on this article, you've got a couple of options. You'll notice that they're not the most colorful, vibrant articles. This is by design. We've kept it reasonably plain text so that if you really wanted to print something out, you can, and you're not burning through ink like it's nobody's business. They're easy to read. We are going to be doing some additional work on the formatting and the like to make them even better for screen readers and the like. Accessibility is a huge thing for all of us across the peak bodies. But for now, being in plain text, they should be able to be quite usable for screen readers and the like, and for just anyone in general. Visually, they should read well and not be too tiresome on the eyes. If you do want to print out an article, you've got the print button here, so you can print out any article you like. And the other thing that the page also does, which is quite useful, is it sits there and provides additional readings that you might like. And this could be down to a number of things. It could be, it bases it on, are there links within a page that may pertain to another article? Is there some references that are relative to one another? And so you'll see here, I'd like to show welcoming and safe volunteer spaces. If we open up that, we can see that it actually links to engaging newly arrived migrants. But this article actually goes into creating safe spaces and being quite inclusive. I point this out as well because our lovely hosts today, SANT, have actually provided a number of articles at clickable down here. And they're great articles to read. We've also got a video here, which was done in partnership with the Centre for Volunteering and with Sector Connect on psychosocial support, which is absolutely huge in the sector at the moment. And again, this is an example where we link off to additional pages. So I'd like to use this to link to one more page, which is engaging volunteers with disability. This is a massive article, lots of information in there, a lot of different resources to explore, attachments, videos. But this is one of the articles that links off to some e-learning. So from here, I'm going to use this as an example as to where you can get a lot more information if you really want to delve into a topic. So here we've got understanding disability. And if we click on that, this will take us to the understanding disability page, e-learning. And you'll see that this is a piece of e-learning that was developed with People with Disability Australia. And there are three modules: disability confidence, facilitating access, and psychosocial disability, where you can launch all of those and partake in the e-learning module. So I'll just click on one for now, just to show you what we've got. And you'll see it opens up the e-learning, hopefully pretty fast. And you can work your way through the e-learning accordingly. And carry on and go forth. I'm not going to bore you as I go through this, but you can see, but with all the e-learning that gets built within the network, we've tried to make sure is as engaging as possible, as responsive on multiple devices as possible. So in this case, I know this particular piece will work very well on a mobile device, so that if you feel like you want to sit at home and use your iPad or your mobile phone instead of watching Netflix, you want to break into a little bit of learning, all available for you. And wherever there's accompanying resources to that e-learning, they're attached again at the bottom there. So having spoken about e-learning, we might go and explore the e-learning tile now. And there's, again, it's broken into a couple of different sections at the moment: general and foundations of volunteer management. I'm going to ignore foundations of volunteer management for a moment. That's a little bit of exciting news that I'm going to add on to the end of this presentation. But if we go into general, we'll see we've got 9 pieces of e-learning. And within there, these, when I say 9 pieces, these could be huge units or modules. But there's two really cool resources I'd like to call out if you haven't already used them. They've been around for a little while now, and I'll give you a little bit of early mail on this. They are both currently in the process of being reviewed and rebuilt into the for anyone who is slightly a tech nerd like me, Rise 360, which is going to make them even better to use, more mobile responsive, etc., etc. So we've got the Volunteer Management Handbook, which takes you through pretty much all facets of volunteer management, and you can get a whole lot of information, additional readings, everything from understanding volunteering to understanding volunteer management, what's involved, the various stages, different skills you might need as a manager or leader, program development and recruitment, which is huge. And you'll see that within it, there's links to templates as well, links to videos, and managing volunteer and teams, which is the core of what you need to be doing as a volunteer leader. And we're constantly looking to update this and make it as useful as possible so that it doesn't matter whether you're starting your journey as a volunteer leader or well and truly in the midst, or you just want to review some information, you can come back and use these handbooks whenever you'd like. The other one that I mentioned before was the Volunteer Handbook. Now, this one's very similar to the Volunteer Manager Handbook, but it's been designed to almost support you as part of your onboarding process. So we know it would be lovely to turn around to every volunteer involving organization and say, we can write your onboarding process for you. That would be nigh on impossible because we'd have to learn every business across Australia and every volunteer program across Australia. But there are some core things that a volunteer should know before coming into an organisation, whether it be before they're about to commence volunteering or even when they have walked through the door, signed the paperwork, and away they go. So we've tried to create a handbook, and it is in early release, and we are about to incorporate a bunch of feedback, which should help with that volunteer life cycle, but more from the volunteer's perspective, but as a tool a leader can use as part of onboarding. So we've got understanding volunteering. So for those who may be thinking, oh, am I really wanting to get into volunteering? This will help there. Getting started. And great information there, like even things like what sort of checks. One of the things we often hear is volunteers hate the amount of paperwork, but we know that they're a necessary evil. Explaining up front what paperwork they may be facing and why can just take away that conversation or at least alleviate the stress that may come. How to be an effective volunteer. So they're already in the game, but getting to understand their rights and responsibilities, various pieces of documentation, and how to work effectively in a team or even individually with time management and the like. It's kind of funny how new volunteers almost need to understand, but it's just like having paid employment in a lot of cases. And you've got to manage your time. You've got to be able to work well in a team. You've got to still have the same rights and responsibilities as if you were going to get paid. Obviously, there are certain rights and responsibilities as a volunteer or as a volunteer organisation for the volunteer, but in general, you're still working with other people. And so that comes with sometimes just calling it out, even things down to personal presentation or needing to wear protective equipment. That gets called out. A little bit on inclusion and diversity and understanding discrimination in the law. And then finally, progressing your volunteer journey. So you've been in the role for a while. What's next? It could be anything from moving on from a role to maybe even considering things like getting into joining a committee or the board of management. Which then leads me to another fantastic piece of e-learning we've had developed is our governance for boards and committees. Highly recommend that even if you are just I shouldn't say just, you're not just the volunteer leader, you are the volunteer leader. But if you're trying to understand what the board's roles and responsibilities are, or you've got volunteer board members, I highly recommend they take a look at this. The Centre for Volunteering was instrumental in getting this built, and I only promote that because I want to explain that this is a fantastic piece of e-learning that has built on a lot of the various different paid courses that are out there. So the Institute of Community Directors, the Institute of Company Directors, we've taken a look at what they offer in their paid courses. And to be fair, some of those courses are extremely cost prohibitive for a small organization. But being cost prohibitive doesn't stop the fiducial duties of a committee board member. So we've tried to create a bit of online learning with a number of different modules that will take you through what you need to be an effective board or committee member. So I highly recommend taking a look at that. Another one that is very popular is our recruit and retain volunteers. So we know that recruiting and retaining volunteers is massive. We all wish we had the crystal ball or the silver bullet to make it a lot easier, but this is hopefully the next best thing. In partnership with Penny York from Usability. And Penny York, if you've been in the sector for long enough, you've probably been on a webinar where Penny is talking about recruiting and retaining volunteers. We've said, well, Penny, how can we capture that into a bottle and share that around? Well, instead, we got Penny onto a bunch of videos and turned it into e-learning. So if you fire that up, you can see there are two core modules, retaining volunteers, recruiting volunteers, and broken down to a number of different modules, which is a combination of activities, videos, and additional explainers in there. So highly recommend taking a look at that. And finally, I just wanted to show another piece of e-learning that I think is just absolutely fantastic. This was developed in partnership with Settlement Services International, Volunteer Voices, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. This is a very new piece of e-learning that's just been released. Highly recommend taking a look at it. It really looks at inclusion and diversity, but from the lens of those with a lived experience. And you'll see there's a lot of interviews in here, discussions, a fantastic bit of work. So highly recommend taking a bit of a look at that if you're particularly interested in inclusion and diversity in your workplace. Okay. Videos and podcasts. I'll call out a couple of key areas, but again, it's pretty straightforward. Under general, this is where you'll get all past webinars that have been posted up for general viewing. There's some videos here on digital literacy. Now, these have been designed in conjunction with an instructional designer who has gone through and created really simple to follow videos to take you through some of the core activities you are likely to do in your role as a volunteer leader, as anyone really working in a businessy type organization. That's a bad definition, but I think you get where I'm coming from. For a range of different platforms. And we've tried to cover off the core ones. Microsoft, Google, Zoom is covered in there. They're really quite good videos for really anyone from beginner to intermediate levels of digital literacy. So these are starting to gain quite a bit of traction. Post-COVID, we know that people were kicking and screaming into the digital world, and now it's time for them to really start to understand why they're doing what they're doing and the like. So these can be really good if you've got someone in your organization that needs a little bit of a hand with a particular element. Just opening up one, Guide to Delivering Webinars. You'll see here there's a video and also an accompanying guide that will give you a whole bunch of hints and tips. If we were to take a look at, say, Google 101, we've got a couple of videos on here. One's like an overview video, and then we've got a bunch of explainer videos that will actually take you through the steps using a simulated model. So worth checking out. All right, from there, we've also got videos on Victor and Involve, so the platforms that we promote within the Peak Body Network for managing volunteers and for advertising for roles. So highly recommend taking a look at those. Great explainer videos. Most of those have been developed by Volunteering WA. So thank you very much to those guys for putting such nice videos together. And then we've got links to podcasts. At the moment, I think most of these are the Centre for Volunteering's podcast. We launched a podcast channel last year, but hopefully as the other state and territories see this and we provide such, encouragement, they start popping their own podcasts on here as well. And these will link out to wherever they're located. So in this case, most of these will take you through to our link tree, and helps if it works, but you'll be able from the link tree be able to access things like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever platform it's on. Unfortunately, the link tree often needs updating as we end up with the various different podcast catches changing all the time. So we probably need to fix that one. All right, templates. We've got 52 customizable templates on here. That's a lot. But if you need a template, if you think something's missing, let us know. I'm going to pull out a couple of these. So ones that are generally of a lot of interest, the volunteer agreement. So let's open that up. Probably gone to my downloads. Oh, no, here we go. All right. You'll see that the template's very plain text, which is deliberate by design so that you can customize it with your own branding and the like. And you'll also see as a combination of light gray and dark text. The light gray is where you can come along, insert your organization's name, modify it accordingly. They all open up in Microsoft Word so that if you need to delete whole sections, add additional information to suit your program or your organization, all readily available for you. We don't mind what you do with them. These are a great starting point for most of the core policies, procedures, templates you're going to require in getting your paperwork up to scratch in your organization. Other ones that are generally of use, I mean, they're all of general use, but you'll also see we've got things for role descriptions. We've got induction checklists. I won't sit here and bore you and open them all up, but I encourage you to take a bit of a look at those and see how you can use those in your organization. Finally, we've got research and reports, and you can see here it's relatively new, not a lot under there at the moment, but we do have the online accessibility survey, and you can access the documents here to have a bit of a read of that report. Well worth having a bit of a squiz. All right, finally, before I stop sharing my screen, the last thing I wanted to show you is under e-learning, the foundations of volunteer management. This is something we're very excited for. Over the next, well, until mid-year, you will start to see that this will go from being 2 units here to eventually 7 units. Those 7 units are 7 units based on the Certificate 4 in volunteer coordination. It's not a like-for-like change, but what we wanted to do was create, for those of you who maybe are very interested in gaining the knowledge that you would get from the Certificate 4, but you don't have the time, the money, the whatever to do the Cert 4, we're getting the 7 units created into digital online e-learning that you can partake in free of charge. Absolutely free of charge. And we're doing this because the information that's contained in these is fantastic. I'll open up manage and promote diverse. Well, actually, let me open up communication to build relationships, which I think is fantastic because communication is something we quite often hear that people want more information on. Within this, you'll see that there are a heap of modules. These are massive units and they do align to the Cert 4, not an exact like for like. So you can't exactly do this and then expect a piece of paper at the end of it, but you are gaining very similar information. So if we open up understanding effective communication, you'll see that you've got quite nice e-learning that you can work your way through that covers off a lot of information. Videos, activities to test your learning, etc., etc. So we're very excited for that. And there are, as I say, there's 2 launched at the moment, and by mid-year there'll be the other 5 launched. So continue coming back to that section. All right, I'm going to stop my screen share at the moment and just pull up my slide deck one last time. So what's the plans? Well, the knowledge base has got a lot of work underway, commencing actually this week, to customize the interface a little bit. There are some things that, whilst it's quite usable, we wanted to make a lot better. As I mentioned, the way you see the attachments, changing that up a little bit. Iconography on the front screen so that it's not just about the words, it's also you can identify what section you're in based on the icons, and a few other little tweaks. There are plans in place to review the page layouts and formatting to align with WCAG accessibility standards. So for those of you who are like, what the heck's all that? They're the web accessibility standards that are out there to make them as accessible as possible. We'll probably be aiming to try and get it at a AA standard at best. It's a lot of work to get it to AAA standard, a lot of work, but most of the peak body websites would be hitting around that AA standard, so we'll have this very much in line with that. And of course, we're after feedback. And the best way to do that, you might have noticed as I was scrolling through those articles, but there was at the bottom of each page, was this article helpful, yes or no? Obviously, if you weren't able to find what you're looking for and you hit no, that gives us a bit of a false positive on that one. But if generally the article didn't have what you needed in there or you felt there was misinformation and you hit no, it'll actually open up some prompts to provide information to us. Why, what was wrong with it and the like. And if you take the time to fill that out, we review that on a regular basis. And that can actually work for us making updates regularly to the pages. And if it was helpful and you really quite liked it, giving us a yes allows us to see that, yeah, this was a really positive article. And we can start to see trends as to what articles might be getting the most traction. And maybe we may do more on it. We might run live webinars like this to support them. It may just be that we know we've hit the mark with that article and that's the standard we need to be hitting. The feedback always helps. And of course, you can always reach out to a representative at your peak body to say, hey, I'm looking for this. You ain't got it. Can you get it built? And we'll do our best we can.